welcome to my messy shed. It's full of all sorts of junk, including things like X-ray machines, Land Rover parts, and loads of computer bits from all sorts of different eras. Sometimes I get questions, in fact a lot of the time I get questions, about computers, specifically more modern ones, and I forget that not everybody has been living and breathing computers since they were like age 6 or 7 like me. So I'm going to answer a couple of really basic things, and a lot of you guys that follow this channel, you'll probably roll your eyes at this, but bear with me, some people don't know these things. Now up here is a computer. This is not a basic consumer system, this is an X-server machine, but it's easy to open so we can see some things. Underneath this is a heatsink designed to take heat out. Underneath there is a CPU or a central processing unit. That's one chip that runs everything in the computer. Yes, there's more specific ways of saying that. Now in here there is an expansion card. This fits into a slot. These are replaceable, and there are several different slots. There are several different types of slots for different purposes. This one is in a PCI Express slot, and this is a video card. This is what provides the connections for your monitor or your video output. This machine has a little air current control unit that hides the RAM sticks. These are also replaceable, and they come in about 1 million different variations and types and sizes. This is memory. Now there's 2 different types of memory in a computer. Now to give you a quick crash course on memory. This is a fixed memory. These are a CD, these are a ROM, a read-only memory. That's an acronym. These are a read-writable memory. So these are hard drives. These ones are SATA, and that refers to Serial ATA, the connection type on the bottom there. There's many different types and sizes of those connections. This is an older one, and this is for a laptop. This is a 2.5-inch drive. We were just looking at a 3.5-inch. These are still SATA. This is still a very common type of connection. There are many older ones we need not talk about right now. If you've been dealing with computers for a while, you may have seen a floppy drive. These things hold 1.44 meg on a disk. I have many older systems, we won't get too distracted. Up in the vintage section here we have a lot of old stuff, including MFM drives, but they're probably before most of my viewers' times. When you plug a SATA drive in, you need the data lead, which is the little one, and the power lead, which is the big one. This might seem a little backwards, but that's fine. This supplies 12 and 5 volts, sometimes 3.3 volts as well, for your drive. Now, why we introduce storage? Your operating system, all your files and everything are usually stored on 1 or more hard drives. If you remove all of your drives, you won't have an operating system, the computer won't boot. Now, when you run your operating system or a program, the computer will take the data from this through the CPU and load it into the RAM, which is a really fast memory, but it is also volatile, which means when you disconnect the power, it forgets what's going on. That's why when you have a power outage, you lose your work because it was only stored in RAM. When you're ready to save something, it runs it back through the CPU, back into the storage drive again. And that one is non-volatile, it'll keep your memory even when the power's off. Now on these boards there's a little chip. This is not specifically the exact one, but it's about that size. And there is a little battery on there. This little chip has volatile memory, and it contains all the settings that this big board on the bottom, which is called the motherboard, keeps all those settings about all the hardware it's attached, including what drives you are and what cable they're using and all those other settings. That little chip is called the BIOS menu. You can usually get into that by pushing a key at startup. Usually F1, F2, escape, delete. Depends on the model, you have to look it up on Google. Now we're back inside, and this is a laptop. These are different creatures entirely, and this is an old Apple one, which is a different creature again from being a different creature. Go into that in a minute. Some general things about laptops. Generally, the name came about that they can work on your lap. But there are many variations and tablets and all sorts of stuff now. Generally speaking, tablets are not upgradable, period. You generally can't change things. This is an Apple, so about the only thing you can do with this is change the battery. Modern Apples, you can't change the batteries even. Alright, now this is a Dell laptop. Now basically anything that isn't a Mac generally has more upgradable options. This is a mil-spec laptop, which is going to be very different to most you see on the market. Most modern laptops are all thin and skinny. This one's designed with dust doors to keep dust out. It's not exactly a usual option. Interchangeable or hot swappable batteries are a thing of the past. That's why I keep this one. This has all the ports and everything on the outside. Crucially, this one is designed to be upgraded. You can open panels and change things. Things that you cannot change on basically every laptop, with maybe a very rare exception, is CPU. You literally can't change that. This one I got specifically because you can change the video card, but again, that's very rare. Generally, the only two things you can really change on a laptop are RAM and hard drive. We're going to pull the drive out of this one to show you how easy it is. Correction, there were 2 screws and a locking latch. I have to push the lock latch over with a screwdriver, which requires 2 hands. But once you get it out, it comes out like this. Now, this would have normally housed a 2.5-inch hard drive, but this is a non-shock sensitive solid-state disk. Hard drives have a spinning disk with a magnetic surface on it and a little set of heads that runs across there. If you drop it like that, you can break it. This has all memory chips. It's basically a giant USB stick. You may hear things spoken of called NVMEs. This is what modern hard drives look like now, and they're even closer to a memory stick. This is a compact NVMe drive. This is what replaces all the bulk of all of that stuff. And a lot of the times you might find what's inside here is basically one of these. But basically, if I was to attempt to boot this up, nothing would happen right now. And I can show you. Let's push the power button. We will get a very small message on the screen that's generated by that small BIOS chip that we spoke of before. That generates this logo, and it'll also basically try and decide where it wants to boot from. There's only a handful of lines of code on there. Some of it is in a fixed memory that won't be erased. If that little battery on board goes flat, the little round one, it'll forget all the settings, but it will keep the basic program. Very shortly, this will tell us it can't boot from anything. See, it's going in a boot loop right now because it can't find the operating system on this. So if you want to upgrade your storage, be prepared to reinstall your operating system or find a tool that's designed to clone from it. And see here, if we go over to this, it says no boot device found. Press any key to reboot the machine. So from here, we're just going to turn it off. Okay, from here, we're going to reinsert our drive, making sure to get it the right way up. And from there, we'll reinstall our screws and we'll try and boot it up again. Now, while this boots up, we'll explain another misnomer. Magnets. Because hard drives store their data magnetically, a magnet will affect them. A solid-state disk, on the other hand, won't. Not unless it's under a really intense magnetic field, not your average fridge magnet. Same as memory sticks. Floppy disks, on the other hand, were stored as magnetic data. CDs were stored optically, not affected by magnetism. As you can see here, Windows is booting. At some point soon, Windows 10 is going to be end-of-lifed, and you're going to get pushed into Windows 11. I have disabled a thing in here called the TPM, or the Trusted Platform Module. That's a little security chip in here that you need for Windows 11, or you need to at least install a driver to make it happen. I don't want to go Windows 11 just yet, so I disabled that. I can turn it back on in the BIOS menu. We'll show you how that works. Now, the BIOS menu in this, I am pretty sure is F2. Okay, we're booting up here. I'm pushing F2 repeatedly, and it's saying preparing to enter setup. So you're going to stop hitting that. This key is different for every machine. Now, this is a more advanced menu than you'll see on some of these. This actually has a mouse interaction. A lot of the older systems are a very basic one where you use your up and down arrows. But this allows you to give your system information, your battery health, which order it likes to check things to boot from, because you can boot from something like a memory stick or a CD if you really want. And it allows you to change your video settings, your performance settings, all of the different things, and even the date and time. That's stored on that little chip. and it's got a little clock in there that ticks away, part of why it needs a battery. So all of that is available from here. If you don't know what you're doing, don't change something in here. If you want to get out, just hit escape and tell it to exit without saving. Now, in the process of filming this, I have violated one of my cardinal sins, which is not sticking the 2 screws to a magnet, and I've since lost those screws. I normally stick screws to a magnet like this, so I don't lose them. But they're very small screws, they're very hard to find, they're very easy to lose, and they're about 2.5mm diameter. I'm going to go crawl under the bench, find those, and hopefully this was helpful to some of you people that aren't entirely sure or aware of how computers work. See you in the next one.